Coronavirus. How coronavirus is changing travel. Right now, today, it's February 10th, 2021. And so far, my assessment of corona that we'd be back to normal relatively fast. I've been wrong. Initially, I thought we would have been back already. I now think most of the world will be back to some kind of normal by maybe March or June. I'm not even convinced of that anymore. Another thing is coronavirus has changed the way people think about the world and everything. It's changed politics quite a bit. So one thing that coronavirus has done is, for at least for travelers, is you can't travel anywhere without special permission. You have to have round-trip tickets that you have to prove. Before, you didn't have to have that as much. Number two, you have to have a PCR test or antigen test, and it has to be within usually 70 to 90 hours. It depends on the country. Number three, everything I just said changes constantly. Number four, if you're from the United States or the United Kingdom, a lot of times you're not welcome in countries anymore. Number five, another thing is, if you're from Canada, the Canadian Prime Minister wants to charge you $2,000 to return to Canada. That's money you will have to pay. But the Prime Minister or the government said they're not going to do it yet. But they want to charge you money for a test when you return. Even if you're on an airplane and the test is okay, you can return. They still want you to quarantine at your own expense at their hotels for $2,000 for, I think, 3 days. And that is really changing. What I mean by all this is governments are using coronavirus, in my opinion, Johnny's opinion, to bankrupt middle-class people, or to raise the cost so high that middle-class people can't travel anymore. That's what I think is going on with coronavirus. There's a lot of ulterior motives being done in the disguise of corona to make it more difficult for people to travel. And so far I was wrong. I thought we'd be back to normal, and I do think we'll get back to some kind of normal. But as I look more and more, that day is going to be delayed and delayed. And then as I think about it, North Americans and Europeans won't be able to leave the country as easy. They'll have to have coronavirus passports, so-called, or immunization passports. They're going to have your regular passport. Oh, and another thing I forgot to mention. Many countries require you to have medical insurance before you can come to the country. So, for example, Costa Rica and Thailand, if you want to go to those countries for like a month, I do believe it's about the same, about $100 a month. I could be wrong on that. So every month you stay in Costa Rica or Thailand, it's $100 a month. And those are not the only two countries. So you have to pay a lot of money to quarantine in many countries. You have to have special insurance. In some countries, even if you get immunized from all this, you still have to pay all this extra fees. And that's another thing, 6 or 7. I haven't been counting. But you're going to have to pay more money to travel on airplanes. A lot of my friends are stating that they have to pay more to travel on airplanes. And they have to pay more in the sense that they have to use more time to get a round-trip ticket. Here's what I mean. What my friends do is they get that $12 to $20 ticket you can do, where it says you have a real ticket on a computer that's canceled after 24 hours of buying it. So when you're coming through on your travels, it says you have a round-trip ticket, even though technically you don't. And then recently, some friends of mine came into Mexico. Now, they got in fine, no problem, but they had never been asked for round-trip tickets. Never, ever. And they were asked for it. I mean, they were let in, and ultimately they had fake round-trip tickets, but that never happened before. And that's another point. As you travel more and more, when you go through immigration, there's a lot less people going through, so they have a lot more. I mean, immigration has a lot more time to harass you, ask you lots of questions, ask you to prove your income, like you have enough money to stay there, ask you have a round-trip ticket, ask you what hotels you're going to stay in. I got asked like where I was going to stay at when I came into Central America, but I just told them a hotel that I had no intention of staying in, but they are asking these questions. I imagine some countries maybe want you to prove it with a reservation. I don't know. But what's all this coming to is there's going to be more and more countries you just, as a practical matter, you can't easily and cheaply go to. So travel, as you know, what could be the possible outcome could be it won't be cheap like it was in the last 15 or 20 years, with airplane tickets going up, with more potential visas if you're a North American, European, or permission to get into these countries now with coronavirus. More countries won't let you come in unless you have the immunization and proof of it. More countries are going to have other things that you could, like who knows, like maybe there'll be another coronavirus or something like it. And if you don't have that immunization, you're not going to be allowed to travel. So the ultimate outcome of coronavirus is it's going to be much, much harder to travel. I was wrong about that. I didn't think it would last too long. I was wrong about that. It seems to be the UK, the United States, Canada, and many other countries are making it harder to leave and come back to your country without incurring a huge expense like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Some Asian countries, even if you get immunized, you're going to have to pay $100 a month to get insurance to stay in that country if you want to live there, or even be a tourist there, like a perpetual tourist, like $100 a month. So you stay there 6 months, you have to have $600 extra just for the insurance. Now, if you have all that money, you don't mind it, that's fine. But a lot of budget tourists and backpackers, they're not going to spend that kind of money just to go to Thailand or Costa Rica. Now, there'll be a few, but I don't think the numbers are going to be near as high as they used to be. And the other thing is, now that governments see they've done this power grab and this asset grab, depending on which country you're from. By asset grab, I mean, getting their congresses and their parliaments to give them all these handouts to various special interests. Well, they've also curbed your freedoms and liberties to go to a bar to have a drink. They've curbed your freedom and liberty just to go work out at a gym. I don't see him I see him loosening up a little, but I don't see him giving up that power. So coronavirus is going to lead to a more suspicious society and shut down society, and a more impoverished society as they ask for people to comply more and more to these rules and regulations because of health reasons and all that. So I see that as the ultimate outcome of coronavirus. I don't see the government's giving back a lot of the power they grabbed. And until the Treasury is totally bankrupt, I see governments printing more money and printing more money before this thing ultimately either goes to inflation or disinflation or deflation or possibly hyperinflation. But ultimately it's going to end in the bankruptcy of a lot of the Western countries. This is why I'm kind of bullish on the emerging markets, because not all, but most emerging markets have very low debt levels, and their societies of young people are much younger. Whereas like in Italy, France, the UK, the United States, we have a huge baby boomers that are going to retire. And it's going to take out most of the tax revenue that comes in. Most of the money that's going to be borrowed has to go to the baby boomers to pay for the retirements and their healthcare needs. Whereas in Africa and Latin America, parts of Asia, there's the average age of people is much lower, so there's not any of this money going to healthcare and pensions and things like that. So they'll be way more competitive. Their wages will be much lower. And with these young populations, you're going to be hungry to take away the rice bowl of Americans and Europeans and Canadians. And they're going to compete like on steroids. They are going to compete and eat Americans' lunch and Europeans. So that's why I'm more bullish on emerging markets. That's why if I wanted to not stay in Europe or North America, I would head personally to Latin America or Asia or Africa, or depending on, what regions are amenable to you. And it also depends on how, after eventually Corona will be over, but we'll have to see what Asia, Latin American countries do. If they're going to let Americans back in like they did before, and Europeans and Westerners, are they going to crack down and only let wealthier people live there and work there and travel? Or are they going to just have mass tourism like we did in the past? I'm guessing some countries are not going to have mass tourism. They're going to kind of shut their countries down a little bit. And some countries are probably going to open up, but Americans just won't go there because the cost and complying with all the rules and regulations will be too high with the new visa requirements, if there are new visa requirements, which I think will be in some countries. And that will force people who want to travel, they'll have to make a decision because it'll cost so much. They're either going to stay there and live there and work and play there, or they're not going to visit. They're going to just stay in their local countries and vacation and do their thing either locally, or they'll just hop across a local border that's not far to go. Like for North Americans, that'd be Mexico and or the Caribbean or parts of Central America, where for Europeans, that'll be more like Africa, Eastern Europe, and that region of the world. and the southern part of Europe too. But I presume Europe is going to stay, the EU will stay together until it doesn't. I actually see the EU kind of breaking down. Corona, incidentally, might be hastening the decline of the EU as far as their borders. They might have hard borders now after Corona. They might not. They say they're going back to normal, but I don't know if I believe it. But it could hasten the end of these open border policies in the EU. It's going to hasten the bankruptcy of the EU because all this money that they're going to, print or borrow to bail out the kind of old elite falling business special interests, and then again the people retiring on the pensions and the medical systems they have there, which are super expensive. So I can see that all falling apart. So people will be looking for scapegoats and going to Africa, the Eastern Europe, possibly the Middle East, possibly 8 parts of Asia. We'll have to see. But anyways, that's what I'm thinking. This coronavirus probably will change things more than I had originally thought. So governments from the EU to the US will not give back freedom and liberty to people like we had before. They will not give back, clamping down on certain people. We'll have to see who actually gets the loot. So far, at least in North America, the elites have gotten more of the loot. We'll have to see. But I suspect as the countries go bankrupt and get less and less money coming in, it's going to be harder for the governments to fund all these pensions and medical care. And that's going to just lead to a lot of social unrest. And because it will lead to a lot of social unrest, they'll just clamp down on population. We've seen that, especially in France. We may be seeing the early innings of something happening with the Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau. He's really clamping down on people's freedom and liberties. He's been getting pushback. We'll have to see how that goes. Hopefully, because we're in the Americas, the Canadians will make a wise decision and get some of their freedoms back. But you really never know. But even the Prime Minister in France, he's making noises you would never thought of. Like he's saying some pretty politically incorrect things that I would never thought of he would say. Anyways, it does appear to me that Corona changed the world more than I had anticipated. But we'll have to see ultimately how this all plays out. But I do think it could be harder to travel as easy as we used to travel, and travel is cheap. So we'll have to allocate more money and capital to traveling, maybe only being in certain regions. They have special agreements like the Mercosur region in South America, the C4 region in Central America, and then in the EU. I don't know how much longer the EU is going to stay together, but if that stays together, that's a region too, but we'll have to see. Anyways, this is Johnny. Have a good evening wherever you're at in the world. Like, share, leave a comment. It helps the channel grow. Thank you.